What is up, guys? Frosty Aussie here today for another Frosty Features. I know I have missed a couple of weeks. I had some family stuff kind of come up. We got a dog, which was super fun and such. But anyway, we're back on schedule. We are going to still do we're doing our last Starjammers. So here's Havok. If you haven't been here before, what this is a comic book background on the tunes that you use in Marvel Strike Force, and I am your guide through the pages. So with this, huge disclaimer, really quick, okay? I have referenced this in many Frosty features, and this is the first time we actually have to do a feature on a Summers, sort of, okay? So, full disclosure, I have talked about Havok a lot in Frosty features. Very specifically, the last one we did, Lalandra, and also Madeline Pryor, way back when she came out. Okay, so we've had many times where we've talked about Havok. The Summers line is extremely complicated. I actually would have posted this video 2 weeks ago, but sorting out the thoughts in a Summers line. So Summers being Havok's name is Alex Summers. So full disclosure, this one can be a bit of a mess, right? So with that, that doesn't bode well for Scopely's blog post description. So with that, this is the blog post description. This is the lore that we are given by Marvel Strike Force on their blogs on the Marvel Strike Force website. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read this to you now, and then we are going to rate it at the end of the feature. Who is Havok? The younger brother of Cyclops, Alex Summers, discovered his mutant ability to absorb cosmic energy and unleash devastating plasma blasts after surviving a traumatic plane crash as a child. Alex struggled to control his immense destructive power, but he found a new purpose among the X-Men. He eventually joined the Starjammers, a group of spacefaring rebels, where he honed his powers in battles across the cosmos. He adopted the name of Havok, embracing the freedom of the stars, carving out his own legacy beyond Earth, and fighting to protect those who had no one else. So, like I said, we will rate this at the end of the feature. Some of the big things I've been pushing for as a content creator, and I put in a good word for me. I applied to be an envoy. My aim is to define what Marvel Strike Force lore is. A lot of this is wrong. Spoiler alert. But it could be rewritten as MSF lore. So, once again, we're going to go from the aspect of the comic books, but we'll hit on a bunch of this. But a lot of what's brought up in this blog post description is in Frosty Features Lalandra. So, let's roll. That's our guy. I use this version of Havok because this is the Havok when I think of him, this is who I see. Name, Alexander Summers. First appearance, X-Men number 54, all the way back in 1969. Powers and abilities, energy conversion and dispersion. So he doesn't just use plasma blasts. He can also do the concussive force and different types of blasts based on what he's doing. Ultimately, he pulls in cosmic radiation from the world around him, and it starts to build within him, and he has to expel it one way or the other, so he can become, frustrated or have that built up, whatever, and then he'll have to find a way to release it, right? So a lot of his control, especially as his control comes heavily from his costume. So when he's wearing the one that he's got in the game, where he's got like all the little loopy-doos around him and stuff, that is to help direct his powers. And throughout different points in Alex's life, he can control his powers, he can't control his powers, all this stuff, and we'll get into that. But for context, he's essentially he's very similar to Cyclops if it went all the way from everywhere out of his body all at once, and not just his eyes. Okay, kind of, because Cyclops is only just concussive blast, right? So his is plasma and a few different types of matter is what we're gonna go with today. Aliases, Goblin Prince and Alex Blanding. So we're going to talk about Blanding, and the Goblin Prince covered heavily in Frosty Features Madeline Pryor, because I really like Havok. So go way back and check that out. See how Frosty has changed over the years. That was a while ago. So it's a good time. But ultimately, she becomes a Goblin Queen, and he becomes her Goblin Prince. Like I said, go back and check that one out. So those are really the only two aliases. Besides that, we really just go by Havok and Alex. Affiliations. X Factor, X-Men, and Starjammers. So he is a member of the Starjammers at one point. As I said, the Lalandra feature. X-Men and X Factor are obviously the two big ones. For years, my veterans in Marvel Strike Force, I call to you for years and years and years. We have said we need a Havok to fill out X Factor. As of this recording date, we still do not have a 5th X Factor member in Marvel Strike Force. Nobody really cares anymore, but I do want to throw it out there. I feel like Havok came out and everybody was like, it doesn't matter anymore. X Factor is irrelevant, but here he is. We finally got him. I'm a big fan. I'm a big Havok fan. Granted, in writing this feature, I realized something really important about Havok that never really occurred to me. So we'll talk about that in a second. Background: Hawaiian, Honolulu. He and his brother Chris, not Chris, his dad's name's Chris, Scott, are born, and Gabriel's not born in Hawaii though. But anyway, these two are born in Hawaii. They live there with their mother and father, so Catherine and Chris. And big things happen to make them become who they are, eventually getting adopted, etc. So with that, who died? It can't be superhero, supervillain without somebody dying. And in Alex's case, it was his parents. Him and Cyclops, his parents' death is what led to him becoming Havok as a whole. There's also, debatably, we're going to talk about a kid named Vincent. His death also sort of directly leads to Havok being a thing. So to not try to roll back over my last feature of Lilandra, in short, we'll hit it in the notable events, but Alex and Scott are thrown out of a plane. The plane is kidnapped by the Shi'ar, and but Alex and Scott, falling through the air, thought that the plane that was kidnapped was exploded, so they assume their parents are dead, right? So we'll hop into that a little bit more in notable events, but these are these things that kind of lead to where we got. Havok's powers as a battery. So there's a few things I want to talk about. I'm going to talk about Havok, especially in going through some of this stuff. In Frosty Features, a lot of what I do is I talk about a lot of characters have repeating plot lines, right? The same things happen to them over and over and over and over. It's not every character, but a lot of your side characters and such. And Havok, in my opinion, he has all the means to be a main character, but he always ends up being a side character, and that's because it doesn't matter. Usually, when it comes to Marvel characters, it depends on who's writing him. I think universally across all comicdom, let me know, my comic fans, let me know in the comments. I think Havok's main problem is that he's stupid. Havok's dumb, right? He does dumb things. Because as I was going back and I was analyzing, writing some of this stuff down, I got to one of these things and I was like, why would a character do this? Whatever, blah, 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 blah. It's because he's dumb. So with that, one of the main plot lines we have is because of Havok's potential. His powers are insane. So a lot of the plot points with Havok is that characters that have a similar power set to Havok kidnap Havok and use him to boost their own powers. Off the top, I'm sure there are other examples of this happening with outside of Havok, but I find this really interesting because I can't think of one off the top of my head where that's like people are like, I need that guy to be a battery for me. But that's pretty much all Havok is. Havok is like, I'm using cosmic energy. So it's like every character out in the Marvel universe that also uses cosmic energy is like, you know what? If I take this guy and put him in a tube, I'll get stronger, right? So half of all of Havok's plot lines are... Oh, that's not even fair to say. I'm going to say 33% of all Havok's plot lines are him being used as a battery for somebody else. 33% are him being brainwashed because he's dumb. And the other 33% are really good. Sibling immunity. One of the interesting things about the Summers brothers... So I always try to avoid getting too far into certain bloodlines and things like that. The Summers bloodline is crazy and it's super confusing, as I talked about in Lilandra's feature. But one of the most interesting things between the three, so Cyclops, Vulcan, and Havok, is their powers don't work on each other, right? Like they do, but there's no effect. So Havok can go full on, like, I'm gonna cover you in napalm plasma stuff, and Cyclops will be fine, whereas any regular human being would be toast, right? So it's kind of an interesting little thing, and it comes up an awful lot because Havok and Cyclops, they are the quintessential brothers who hate each other, right? So Havok is the younger brother. They hate each other, but they love each other. They are brothers, but they fight. They very much feel like teenage brothers. This could result from the fact that Scott Summers is a complete and utter douchebag pretty much all the time, and then that doesn't couple well with his younger brother of 2 years being stupid, right? If you have a brother that's a douchebag and a brother that's stupid, they're either going to be a team that beats a lot of people up. This is in real life and comics, so this is actually how that works. Or they're going to fight each other a lot, right? Which is also how this works in real life and in comics. So, here we go. Here are the tales of the douchebag and the stupid guy. I just explained 50% of X-Men comics to you. You're welcome. Relationships. Christopher and Catherine Summers are his parents. Andrew and Mrs. Blanding are his adoptive parents. We'll talk about them more in a second. Madeline Pryor Summers is his alternate reality spouse. He has a whole thing with Madeline Pryor in the main 616 and in alternate realities, and even has a kid. Cyclops, Vulcan, and Adam X are his siblings. I forgot about Adam X. Gabriel? No. Gabriel's Vulcan. Yeah, sorry. So yes, that's a genetic brother situation. So Adam X, speaking of the sibling immunity, Adam X is the only exception. So Vulcan, Cyclops, and Havok, they have sibling immunity. Adam X, it doesn't actually count. He can hurt them and they can hurt him. Pretty interesting. Notable events. Origins of Havok. So, with the origins of Havok, like I said, so we are a family. We are having a good time. Our daddy Christopher, he's a ace pilot, and we're flying his vintage Mosquito. We were on vacation because we're a loving family, and all of a sudden a spaceship comes out of nowhere, and Dad's like, "Oh my gosh, what am I to do? A spaceship? I'm only an ace pilot." So he starts doing evasive maneuvers. And in doing so, it's a Shi'ar vessel, which large alien galactic empire, shoots some stuff at him. And the comics go out of the way to explain that if Chris was not such a good pilot, the whole plane would have been destroyed. Anyway, so he gets winged, right? He gets a little hit, right? And Catherine's like, "Oh gosh, we got a family of 4 on here. We only packed 1 parachute. What are we gonna do?" So she grabs little Scott Summers, little Cyclops. So for main context, very important to note, neither Havok nor Cyclops have their powers at this point. So this, with mutants, if you don't know, if this is your first Frosty Features or you never read a comic book, mutants manifest their powers often in times of intense stress. Okay, so you see where this is going. So they grab little Scott and they're like, "Hey, little Scott, things are going a little crazy with this ship. Your dad's stressed. I'm stressed, and it'd just be a lot easier if you two weren't here." So, in an attempt to save them, that was not the dialogue in the comic. In the attempt to save them, they strap the 1 parachute that is on this plane that had a family 4 on it to Scott Summers, and she's like, "Hold your brother as tight as you possibly can." And so, Scott grabs Alex, and they are pushed out of the plane, and in falling, they see the what they believe is the plane exploding, but what actually happened was the plane was teleported onto the Shi'ar vessel. This is described in that little Andre feature, and hopefully this is the last time I'm going to bring up that specific feature right now. But so they're teleported away. Little Alex, little Scott, they're falling through the sky, and Scott pulls the parachute deploys, all is well, and then debris from the fight/explosion/ damaged plane is falling, and it actually sets the parachute on fire that is carrying Scott and Alex to the ground. So with that, as they're falling at an increased rate, and so it's starting to look like they're gonna die. So right before they hit the ground, Scott looks down, his powers manifest, and he optic blasts the ground, reducing the speed at which they were falling. And he's trying to save his brother some kind of way, so he's also the cushion. So Scott lands headfirst on the ground, and Alex is able to essentially walk away from the situation. And so for the first little bit after their parents are dead, Scott is in a coma and Alex is totally fine. So they get hospitalized kind of situation. Alex gets taken to an orphanage and Scott is in a coma. And in this orphanage, we find out that it is run by the one, the only Mr. Sinister. So when it comes to the Summers bloodline thing that I don't want to talk about ever, the Summers bloodline is also brought up in our Jean Grey feature, right? And the Madeline Pryor and all that. Mr. Sinister is the reason why it's so complicated. Okay. So anyway, this orphanage is run by Mr. Sinister, who is like, oh, hey, these are two Summers kids. I'm very interested in them. This one manifested mutant powers. This one must also be a mutant. I'm going to keep a close watch on them. But what I want to do is make sure I control the situation. So when Scott comes out of his coma, Mr. Sinister's like, and you're adopted. And so he gets Alex adopted. So Scott and Alex are not at the orphanage at the same time. And Alex is adopted by the Blandling family. And this Blandling family, they're cool. There's some really messed up psychological stuff as far as why they were adopting him. So it's heavily implied that he is replacing their deceased son, Todd. So he has all these expectations and stuff placed upon him as a child to fill in this void that was left by their deceased son. So adopted parents, Andrew, and the beautifully named Mrs. Blandling. And then also he has an adopted sister named Haley. So at school, Alex gets bullied. He's different. He's whatever by this guy named Vincent. He has a little gang, and Haley's trying to stand up for him, but it only works so much, whatever. All that to say, that Mr. Sinister is like, hey, I'm curious. Like, let's see, what do I got to do to make your power start working, Alex? Right? He's poking him from afar. He's got a pencil and he's poking a picture of Alex because Alex can't know this is going on. He's like, what do I got to do to make you mutanize? What do I need to do? And he notices that Alex, he's watching from the shadows, literally. If you read the comics, he's literally standing. He's like in the scene, but he's like in the back. He's like, right? Because it's Mr. Sinister. He's freaking creepy. So he's like, what do I got to do? And so he sees that he's being bullied by this Alex guy. And so, turns out Vincent. So, turns out this Vincent kid is directly involved in the death of Todd, who Alex was adopted to replace, etc. So, Mr. Sinister goes to Vincent and is like, hey, I'm going to pay you a bunch of money if you blow up their house, right? You'll get away with it. I'll pay you money. I want you to blow up this Blandling house. Cool. Kidnap Alex, kidnap Haley, scare them, blow this house up, right? With the intention that something occurs for this to be stopped. So lo and behold, upon going to the house, getting ready to blow it up, he's got Haley as hostage, whatever, and Alex is super mega stressed out, manifests mutant powers, and guess what he does? He shoots a full-fledged uninhibited blast of plasma in Vincent's face and turns him into ashes. He melts this man. Right? Which successfully stops the problem, fixes the issue, and Mr. Sinister is like, oh, damn, that was a lot. I didn't expect that, right? This isn't good, so I'm going to erase y'all's memory. So Haley and Alex's memories are wiped to this occasion, and then he puts up mental blocks in Alex's head so that he can't use his powers to the fullest extent. And then in comics, Mr. Sinister's like, you know what? You're not as good as your brother. And I don't know if any of y'all know anything about Cyclops, but he cannot, or has not, just as a child, just evaporated another being, right? In my opinion, Havok is in every way stronger. So one of the things I brought up earlier in the feature, I think that there's a pretty good chance that Mr. Sinister, because at this point, Mr. Sinister's like, you're inferior to brother. I'm going to move on. For some reason, right? I really feel like at powers alone, Havok is much better. This is my opinion. But I chalk that up because it could be bad writing. I also think it could be due to the fact that Mr. Sinister picked up on the fact that Alex is stupid, right? Because what Scott isn't is stupid. He's a douche. not stupid, right? He's actually very smart, right? He's borderline genius in a couple different aspects. Like super crazy trigonometry brain. So maybe that's it. But this is when Mr. Sinister is like, you don't matter. You get blocks, so you don't just kill everybody and yourself. I'm gonna go focus on your brother. Let's take off. Throughout this, Mr. Sinister is controlled by Apocalypse for a while, and Apocalypse has connections with an alternate reality living monolith who is Ahmed Abdul. And in the 616, this person, he is a mutant, but his latent ability is very sad, but it's based around cosmic energy. So Mr. Sinister is tasked by APOC to make him better, so he grafts a little bit of Havok DNA into Ahmad Abdul, and this superpowers him and makes him turn into the living pharaoh. And so the living pharaoh and Alex end up having this symbiotic relationship, even though Alex doesn't know that. And after Alex graduates college, the living pharaoh's like, you know what, I'm gonna go kidnap him and make him a battery of mine. So ultimately, there's a few plot lines where the living pharaoh kidnaps Havok and uses him as a battery, turns himself into a living monolith, and a bunch of people have to get together and attack it to fight the living monolith, like an Avengers level threat kind of situation, right? So this is the beginning, the beginning of that. So in the first time that he's kidnapped, and it's like, hey, we're gonna make this into you're my battery now. I'm a living monolith. The X-Men show up and rescue Havok, and that's how Havok gets intertwined with the X-Men and ends up getting his name from his work with the X-Men, not the Starjammers, as pointed out in the blog post. So that's sort of the origins of Havok. That's how Havok becomes Havok. Is those? I know that's really long, and there's like two separate events, but they directly aligned, and both were important to get to him being Havok. So that's how he starts. And then we're going to talk about his X Factor thing, because that's been such a big thing with Marvel Strike Force, and this is where it's going to get a little complicated. So I thought his origin would be a little bit more complicated because he's a Summers, at least describing it. Really, this is what's complicated, because X Factor is really the X Factor as we know it, Multiple Man, Polaris, who's in Marvel Strike Force, Multiple Man, Polaris, and then for us we have Longshot and Shatterstar. But the Multiple Man Polaris version of X Factor is the second incarnation of X Factor. The first one having like Jean Grey, Cyclops, it just being an offshoot of the X-Men. So the X Factor is actually there's a storyline at Muir Island where there's a genetic research lab, and the genetic research lab explodes and it kills a couple people, and it's pretty sad. And at that point, the original X Factor, Cyclops, Jean Grey, etc., they disband and they return to being the X-Men. And the United States government goes to Charles Xavier and is like, hey, Charles Xavier, it would be really cool if we had our own team of X people that aren't necessarily yours, but they can still have the X in the name. How about we use X Factor and you help us out? So Charles Xavier and an old Scotty boy, Cyclops, go to Genosha, where Havok and Wolfsbane, which is I'm pretty sure she's still out in Marvel Strike Force, we'll get her eventually. She's a pretty popular character, honestly. But Wolfsbane and Havok are working on Genosha, and they are recruited to join this X Factor process, and Havok is chosen to lead the situation. So with that, this second version of X Factor, which is the X Factor that most people think of when they think of the team, is Polaris, Multiple Man, Havok, Wolfsbane, and Strong Guy. So Wolfsbane and Strong Guy still not being in the game. I think Wolfsbane's more of an important character. Ultimately, the way that this version of X Factor really works is they feel like a side team, even in their own comic runs. This is how I feel. All of their things are pretty much like, we have a mission complete. And it doesn't really feel like, it doesn't always, it's weird. When the Avengers do things, it affects the X-Men, it affects the Fantastic Four, etc. Right? When the X-Men do it, same, right? Everybody sort of everything sort of goes into each other one way or the other. This version of X Factor really, really feels like it's just their stuff affects them specifically, right? And I know there's probably some connections out there that can be made, but it seems like they're more affected by what everybody else is doing than they affect them, right? So the most notable one in this, so Havok is leading this group. He's dumb, and things go bad. So the big thing with X Factor is people die, people leave, people come back, people get romantically involved, get mad, and leave and come back. And that's all X Factor plots. Right there. You're welcome. Right. You're welcome. That's it. So, there's coming into X Factor, there's already a relationship thing between Polaris and Havok, and they've got a thing, and then Wolfsbane likes Havok, and Havok becomes best friends with Multiple Man, and Multiple Man has relationship things, and people leave and come back, especially Polaris, who likes to pop out and pop back in, and a whole bunch of stuff. All big bits of the plot. The most notable one, so because that's how things affect X Factor, right? It's not, oh god, the world's gonna blow up. It's like, no, oh, Wolfsbane's gonna be mad at me, right? Strong Guy's gonna have a bad day, right? So in this, the worst day that Havok ends up having with X Factor really is, there's a situation on Genosha again. Yeah. So they go to Genosha and they run into a group of I believe they're mutants, they're cloned mutants that have the legacy virus, and they don't know that right away. So what the legacy virus is Mr. Sinister, once again, always if a Summers is involved, Mr. Sinister's there somewhere. Mr. Sinister is approached by Strife, who is in Marvel Strike Force, but maybe you've all forgotten because he doesn't matter at all anymore. But he's approached by Strife and is like, yo, here's a little vial, and it's 2,000 years, because Strife is Cable, right? Strife's alternate version Cable from the future. And he's like, here's 2,000 years of Summer's DNA in this nice little vial, and it's gonna be great. You take that. And so Strife ends up getting defeated, etc. And when Mr. Sinister pops open that canister, or that little vial, it turns out not to have any DNA in it, and nothing comes out. And what we find out later is that he released the plague of the legacy virus, so the legacy virus is a very, as far as viruses go in the Marvel universe, in the X-Men universe, it is one of the least effective ones. It goes away really fast. Most notably, in a really sad way, the legacy virus kills magic, right? It kills Colossus' sister, right? We're talking about X Factor. So in Genosha, they're going in this situation, and Multiple Man, he has multiplied, because that's what he does, and one of his dupes catches the legacy virus, and when the dupe goes back into Jamie Maddox, is his name, I believe, Madrix. Anyway, the dupe comes back to the main form. Main form gets the legacy virus. Another mutant named Haven comes in and tries to heal Jamie. It doesn't work. Jamie dies. Jamie was Havok's best friend. Havok has a big mental breakdown because he's Havok. And everything about all the Summers is brooding all the time. And so he quits X Factor and is later encouraged to come back by Polaris. But that right there, like that plot is like every plot in X Factor, right? Except most of the time the X Factor characters specifically don't die, but it very much is like, I got sad, I'm leaving. It's like, we gotta go get that guy back. 3 comics later, we're good. All right, everything's fine. Who's Multiple Man? So anyway, that's sort of Havok's relationship with X Factor. He is a big part of it, and they have some really fun fights and stuff. But they're a really good group of comics to read if you haven't read anything else or you're not familiar with a bunch of stuff. They really, like I said, they feel like a side character if a side character was a whole team. That's my opinion on this version of them. So with that, we're gonna move on to power level. Marvel Strike Force doesn't care about power levels, but here on Frosty Features we do. And the way this works, if you are a multiversal threat, that means that you can end all realities, not just your reality, but the entire multiverse can be toppled at your will. Universal means you can end your reality, then maybe hop on over to another one and topple that one by one, wreaking havoc on the multiverse as a whole. Cosmic means you have power strong enough to take out something like a small planetary body, all the way up to taking out something like a solar system or a galaxy. Super Soldier means that you are beyond all human capabilities. Or I skipped nuclear. Nuclear means you have power equivalent to that of nuclear bomb. Being able to eliminate things to the size of a small city, all the way up to a planetary body with enough time and effort. Super Soldier means you are beyond all human capabilities, doing things like leveling brick walls or even demolishing a city block. City means you are equivalent to a human being's power that is trained to the absolute and utter peak of human condition, right? Here, Olympic level athlete, right? So in Marvel, here we have a lot of mercenaries, secret agents, ninjas, things like that at this level. And then there's Greg. Greg is the undead Asgardian that is spawned by Hela in Marvel Strike Force, and without an undying team to back him up, or anybody else for that matter, Greg isn't worth anything on his own. So, for the sake of our due to undead Asgardian physiology, and just because I like to make the argument, I say Greg is equivalent to that of a regular human being. So I, as the most regular of Frosty Aussies, in a situation where I am pushed out of a plane with the only parachute left, falling. I am pushed out of the parachute with the only parachute left. I'm falling out of the thing. I got pushed out by an angry Thor because I was in the plane. And so I'm falling, and then out of nowhere, flying through the air, pushed out of his own. Hela pushed him out of his own plane. We have Greg falling through the air, and betwixt us one parachute there be. So mid-air, it is a fight to the death before we reach the ground. And with my frosty powers of normalness, I theoretically could take out Greg before hitting the ground. I use him as a pillow. I land on him, feet first onto his chest, and break him. Right? Late deployment of parachute, but not so late as it kills us both, but early enough that I can do this without being injured and still kill Greg by using him as a landing pad. I win. Frosty, checkmate. Oh, with that, Greg is equal to that of a regular human being. And in the case of Havok, I struggle a little bit with this one. I'm going to say Havok is equivalent to that of a nuclear bomb. I do think, to the point, some very notable nuclear characters are like the Hulk, and there are times when Havok fights the Hulk, right? Havok is very, very powerful, but he, like all of the Summers, has a problem with performance when he's doubting himself or some other thing is going on, or in his case, he's wicked strong if somebody else is controlling him because he's brainwashed by literally everybody, right? He even gets trained by Professor X to get mental barriers put inside his head so that he can't be brainwashed, and he still gets brainwashed, right? He's one of the only people that those mental barriers don't really seem to do anything with. With that, if he actually takes his time, stops being stupid, and actually figures out what he's doing, I do believe that he is upper echelon nuclear, debatably cosmic, but as of this recording date, I don't believe there is a lot of Havok comics out there where he's in them. I don't believe there is a feat that actually lets him be in cosmic, but I do think there's vast potential for him to be there. If you took Scott Summers' mind and put it in Havok's body, I think you would have a cosmic level being. But with that, it's kind of hard to say. I'm giving him the nuclear rating. And with that, according to Scopely, we're going to rate this. None of this is particularly correct. All right? He discovers his thing by falling out of the plane. That's not true. That's Cyclops. He discovers it way later, like years later after he's adopted. But that's not a thing in the comics. This could be unique to MSF. We don't know. We don't have an MSF lore master. I put in my application. Haven't heard back. Hit me up, Frosty Austin. Control his power. Yeah, so it's saying that he honed his powers with the Starjammers. In the comics, he hones them with the X-Men. And let's see. Oh yeah, he owned his powers with the Starjammers, and that's how he gets his name Havok. That's not right. In the comics, he gets it from the X-Men. They didn't even try to relate it to the comics. This is another one. This is, I think, the second one. this could be, you could make the argument that this, because this lore is so incredibly different, and it's like they set it up to be correct and then they just fit it to their needs. This could be just straight up MSF lore, right? But we have no proof of that besides this, right? So compared to the comics, they didn't even look at him. It seems like they barely knew who Havok was, and then they made it fit their own narrative, which isn't illegal. It could be an alternate universe, but that's not stated because there's no lore master. Anyway, so that's where we are. That is Frosty Features Havok. I hope that you all enjoyed it. Please let me know your favorite Havok moments down in the comments, or if I got anything wrong, I'd still love to hear from you. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe here on YouTube. It doesn't cost you anything but a couple of clicks. I now stream to YouTube, but also on Twitch I stream, same time. So usually it is Sunday mornings, 8 a.m. Central Standard Time, where we do Frosty Features Live. I hope that you all enjoy this. I hope that you all have a fantastic weekend. Most importantly, all, stay cool.